You're listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11, Monday through Friday. We wanted to get an update this morning with Dov Wilker from the American Jewish Committee, the other AJC, AJC Global. You can follow them all over the place because a lot has happened. A couple of more hostages have been released. There's this kind of mixed messaging coming out of the White House, and there's a lot of things happening related to the war and also on the home front. And in a way, this is part of the home front because we're being attacked as well as United States interests are being attacked as well as Israeli interests. So there's a lot of common interest here. And I wanted to welcome Dov Wilker back. Dov, thank you so much for being with me today.
Of course, Martha. Thank you so much for having me.
So since we last talked, we have passed in Georgia the Anti-Semitism Prevention Act. I know that's not the actual name, but that's what it really is. It codified a definition of anti-Semitism in the hate crime bill and did some good work there. Are we seeing a settling down, not only in Georgia, but across the country, of some of the anti-Semitic activity that we were seeing right after October 7th?
Unfortunately, Martha, we are not. Anti-Semitism continues to be on the rise. While these laws are important, they're not preventing anti-Semitism from occurring. And in fact, because of the opposition to the bill, I think it's fair to say that we are seeing more vocal anti-Semitism, especially in terms of the anti-Zionism that we are seeing, because many people feel that it was an infringement on their free speech rights. So they are demonstrating ways in which it is actually not limiting their impact. But yesterday, American Jewish Committee released our 2023 State of Anti-Semitism report, which was released just around October 7th. So we initially released the report on the survey on October 5th. Because of October 7th, it took a pause, and then on October 17th, it was launched again. And the key finding of that, there are two key findings. Number one, 63% of American Jews feel less secure in the United States today than they did in previous years. It was about 42% in 2022 and 31% in 2021. So we're seeing essentially 100% increase of the fear and the less secure of the Jewish community. And then the second one is that 46% of American Jews are changing their behavior for fear of anti-Semitism. And that, to me, is almost more damning and concerning because that is how we demonstrate our Jewishness. And so with this rise, an unprecedented rise of anti-Semitism, we are continuing to feel the effects of it across North America.
I was driving home. I went to Mardi Gras this weekend and met up with my family down there. We had a great time, and we were driving home on Monday, and as we were getting on to 985, this truck comes up kind of a couple lanes on the side, and it had an Israeli flag with a big red X through the middle of it in a circle, and then a bunch of Palestinian and I don't even want to call it pro-Palestinian, but that's what they thought they were, was pro-Palestinian. And it was very unsettling to me. I'm not Jewish, but it was unsettling to me that somebody would be doing that in the same way when I see, somebody driving down the road with things hanging off the back of their truck that are offensive in other ways. So it's a problem that we are seeing, and I understand because, my husband wanted to make a gesture towards the guy, and I will admit to you, I said, don't do anything because we don't really want to have a problem. I'll admit to you that was my reaction.
Yeah, look, Martha, it's not surprising. I mean, it's part of the challenge. You're absolutely right that people are not pro-Palestinian, right? They are anti-Israel. And that's a very important distinction that we make. Because if they were pro-Palestinian, what they would be calling for is the release of the hostages. And in fact, during the Super Bowl, Israel completed a mission, and they were able to secure 2 hostages that were being held. And the report that came out was, in fact, that they weren't being held by Hamas. They were being held by citizens of Gaza. Now, I can't decide what's worse. The fact that they weren't being held by Hamas, but by regular citizens, or the fact that it's even a question of, like, what Israel is doing and why they're doing it. There are still 134 hostages being held in Gaza today. And I think we are on day 130 since the war began.
Well, and so I would encourage folks too, Dov, is there's some good stories that are being posted now of hostages that have been released that are telling their stories about what happened to them. And there are several of them that I focus on some of the horrific stories they're telling, but I'm also noticing that many of them were held in the general population. Okay, this idea that they were all being held underground in these Hamas tunnels, some of them were, definitely, but that there are, I don't even want to call them average people, but there are people who are living in Gaza who were keeping these hostages in apartments. And there are people who are living in Gaza that when hostages were trying to escape, they were catching them and giving them back to Hamas. So in my view, every time I see something that is, I think, some kind of attack on Israel, my response is demand the release of the hostages and that Hamas surrender. And all of this will be over. Because they started it. I had someone try to engage me, Dov, with this convoluted, and I've seen this sadly at city hall meetings across the country, in all kinds of places, where someone was trying to convince me that the Israeli government and the IDF had actually attacked the Nova Music Festival, and they wanted to make it look like Hamas did it. That is, there are crazy people out there that's what they believe. And I don't know how you fight that.
Well, look, it's hard, right, especially with so much misinformation going around, but I'll share 2 stories. The first is I was in Israel, I just got back about a week ago, and we went to the site of that Nova Music Festival massacre. This beautiful, serene national park in Israel that is now a site of a massacre. And really, it reminded me of when I visited Poland in the May of 2000, and I traveled. We were some random place in Poland, and the bus pulled off to the side of the road, and they took us to the middle of the forest, and they said, in this forest, a massacre took place. And it was to think that people are denying how these massacres took place is astonishing to me. And it just demonstrates the importance of our continuing education around the Holocaust and around how and why Israel exists. So that's number one. Number 2, the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival just opened last night. And it's a 3-week-long festival that goes from February 13th to the 27th, and then virtually from the 27th through March 7th. And on Sunday, February 18th, there's 2 screenings of a documentary that was created about the music festival. The music festival took place on October 7th, and the filmmakers have already been able to put together, because of all of the firsthand footage from the Hamas photos and the survivors' cell phones, and even cell phones of those who perished, they were able to put together a documentary about the music festival and what took place. And so I encourage all of your listeners to consider checking out the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival and seeing that film in particular, but other films that are about what's going on in Israel today.
How is the security around that event?
Security is very high at every Jewish institution across the United States. You cannot go to a Jewish institution without seeing uniformed security at the doors to let you in.
Well, Dov, we're going to continue talking about this tomorrow. I am going to be recording an interview with a Jewish woman who's originally from Oregon, but who is found herself giving tours of some of the Hamas tunnels that have been discovered back in 2014. Wow. This is when she was doing this, but we're going to talk to her about her experiences, and we'll be playing that for our listeners. I am not going to let this story go, Dov. It is important that we as Americans, and especially on this Ash Wednesday as Christians, to remember these issues and not to forget these hostages, not to forget the people who died. I mean, the beautiful young faces, they're hard to look at, but they should be hard to look at because we should not allow this. When the president on Thursday night made this ridiculous comment about how Israel's response was over the top, I was so disappointed because, that wasn't a scripted thing. It was just something he said. He's bowing to pressure from a small minority of people. And it's not about what's political. It's about what's right. And I'm going to always try to be on the side of right.
Well, thank you very much, Martha. We appreciate your support and you're continuing to raise awareness about this. My key takeaway from being in Israel was every day to remind myself and everybody else what day we are at since October 7th and how many hostages. So we are at day 130, and there are still 134 hostages being held captive in Gaza by Hamas. So anything that we can continue to do to raise awareness about that, I'm greatly appreciative for.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Joining me right now is Leah Aldridge, who we've become very good friends over the years on a number of different issues. And right now she's working with Women for Nikki Haley, and we wanted to talk a little bit about that. How are you, Leah?
Good morning, Martha. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about Women for Nikki Haley.
All right, Martha. I'm a conservative, pro-life Christian woman, and I voted for Trump twice. And I had to look really hard in the mirror this time and ask myself if I was willing to do it again. Did I believe Trump was right for my community, my family, and our country? And I gulped hard and realized the answer simply was no, Martha. And there's a couple of reasons for that, but in the end, I'm really tired of losing. I mean, aren't you?
Yes.
Isn't everyone listening to this call really tired of losing? When we lose, we hand our country, we hand my children's future over to the Democrats. And we're seeing what happens when the Democrats are in power. And so we can't afford to hide our head in the sand. Under Trump, Republicans lost in 18, 20, 22. We lost in New York a few nights ago. I mean, in Georgia, I worked so hard on those two Senate seats, David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler.
We both did.
We lost them. We lost. His candidates lose and lose and lose. Herschel Walker lost. David Perdue for governor lost. We can't afford to lose. And Trump and Biden are head-to-head margin of victory. This poll up 2, down 3, whatever. Nikki Haley wins the Oval by double digits. And, our country and my children's future, it's just too important to keep losing. So, like I said, I swallowed hard, and I took the mantle of leading Georgia Women for Nikki, and we've got an incredible hundreds and hundreds of women in Georgia. We've had delegations go to Iowa and to New Hampshire on the stump for Nikki Haley. I will be in South Carolina next weekend with a group of women from Georgia. So I understand that, she's got an uphill battle, but there is a path to victory, and I am so proud to be standing with her and to be a conservative, Christian, pro-life, gun-owning woman standing with Governor Nikki Haley.
And, and I feel the same way. I mean, I have endorsed her. I believe she is the right choice for us. I see the numbers. I know that the numbers for a Republican nomination we're going to have to play a big game between now and through that. But I think she should stay in no matter what. I think she ought to stay in because I think if we get to that convention and she's got a substantial number of delegates, then there's going to be a competition. And I think that you're not going to see him debate her because he is afraid to do that. He wants to call her bird brain from the stage. He wants to do those kinds of things. And I'm like you. I voted for Trump twice. I gave him money. Okay. I just, in good conscience, in the primary, I could not vote. And there were 3 people I gave money to. I gave money to Tim Scott. I gave money to Nikki Haley. This is early on. And I gave money to Chris Christie. And I'll tell you why, because I just loved it. I loved seeing him on that debate stage, really giving it to everybody. So, but about 3 months ago, I just said, you know what? I'm going to get behind Nikki Haley because I think she is the best, because she is conservative. And she says, but this is what the landscape really looks like, and this is what we're going to be able to get accomplished. And that's what we need. That's called leadership.
I mean, I think that's right. I think she's a once-in-a-generation candidate, and I'm disappointed that more conservative Republicans in those early states didn't stand up and vote for her. But it's certainly not over. There's no question. I mean, a small fraction of Americans have even voted. As conservatives, we're the ones that are defending the right to vote. We don't coronate presidents, right? We want to hear from the American public who their candidate is. I know she's getting a lot of pressure to step down, stand down, whatever. Quite simply, this is democracy in action, and I love it. There's certainly a path to victory. I mean, if Trump in 2016 listened to the polls early on, he would have quit and wouldn't have been the president. So Nikki Haley is doing what she has always done, which is to stand up and stand firm and stand in the breach for our country. And, I want to say one more thing. I'm the daughter of a veteran, and I literally cannot stand by why he ridicules our veterans over and over again. And he should not be the leader of the free world if he's not going to stand up for members of our armed forces. So that is a point I take very personally. He's done it over and over and over again. And anyone on this that listens to you that is a veteran, or the daughter or the wife or or child of a veteran, there's no way his remarks can sit in your heart with any kind of. I mean, I'm feeling emotional as I'm speaking.
No, look, my dad was a New Yorker. Okay, so I understand kind of this, over the top way that New Yorkers talk, and that if you hit them, they're going to hit them back twice as hard. But my father was also a POW in World War II. And it was very difficult for me. That was the one thing in both of the times I voted for Donald Trump that really hung on me, was the way he talked about John McCain. And, John McCain wasn't a perfect guy. He wasn't a perfect Republican, but he deserved respect for how he handled the fact he was in captivity for 5 years, and he could have, or 7 years, and he could have been released early because he was an admiral's son, and he said no. That took a lot of courage. That took a lot of courage for him to do that. And so it was difficult for me to make that vote. But my dad was not a coward because he was a POW. And my dad was not any kind of a failure because he was a POW. In fact, I think it is one of the things that made him one of the strong person that he was throughout his life. So I understand what you're saying, and I don't understand why he keeps saying those things. That the other night when he made the comment about, where's Nikki Haley's husband? Well, obviously he doesn't understand.
I don't think he does. I mean, I think that, character counts. And I was willing, to sort of move forward and take a chance on Trump. And then, I voted for him again, obviously. But at this point, I've got my last child, Stanton, and any woman that listens to you, I know how they know how this feels. He's 18. He's going to cast his first vote this year. And, is he the man that I want to hold up for my son as being, a leader? Is he someone that I would want my daughter to date? Would I allow my 2 sons to speak to me at the dinner table the way he speaks to people? The answer is no. And so it's time for women that are conservative and Christian and share my values and share your values to stand up and to say, this is really not okay. Nikki Haley is one of us. She was born in the South. She was challenging establishment Republicans as a Tea Party candidate at the exact same time that Donald Trump was voting for Democrats and funding pro-abortion candidates in New York City. I mean, she is one of us. We know who she is. And I'm standing up for her. I hope more women will stand up for her in South Carolina, and men, and in Georgia, because it's time to put our values and our families first, not Donald Trump. Donald's for Donald.
Leah Aldridge, if people want to get involved in Georgia Women for Nikki, how can they do that?
You can go online to Georgia GA Women for Nikki. That's the number 4. We've got Instagram. We've got Facebook. A group of us are going to South Carolina to support Nikki. And we continue to have events here in Georgia. Again, it's Georgia GA Women, the number 4, Nikki. And I hope to meet many more women that are going to support Nikki Haley. And come on, Martha, come on to South Carolina with us.
You know what? I'm looking at my calendar to see if I can do it, so we'll talk about that after, okay?
Sounds great.
Seriously.
Thank you so much.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Joining me on the phone right now is Heath Garrett. He's a political analyst. He's also a former Senator Isaacson chief of staff. He also did all kinds of things for Senator Isaacson, but he also has worked on numerous campaigns across the country. And we wanted to have him weigh in because he always has an independent viewpoint from a conservative perspective. Heath Garrett, welcome back.
Martha, it's great to be with you.
So before we get into the special counsel stuff and Biden and all of that, you heard the Fonnie Willis quote where she basically called the attorney that was, questioning her a liar and that kind of thing. I just was so shocked by all of that yesterday. And she's not going to testify today. It was just announced. So your quick thoughts on all of that, because the decorum was something I've never seen in a courtroom.
No, we were just talking about this. As you know, the Attorney General, Chris Carr, is a client of mine as well, and spent a lot of time working in this case. Scott McAfee, who's the judge in that case, I actually gave him his first job before he went to law school. So following this very closely, I think when she took the stand yesterday, all of it, and I'm covering attorney, we were dumbfounded, right, that this was a terrible strategy for her, but it became must-see television. I was at a diner this morning, and the older gentlemen who were on the table were leaving early so they could go home and watch TV to watch the hearing. So it just shows you how I think how bad her testimony was for her and for Nathan Wade and for the case. But it also exposed that what the attorneys are doing and the hypocrisy here is pretty profound. And I think her testifying yesterday was kind of like Biden running out and doing his press conference last week. It was clearly done in anger and in emotion and not thought through politically and legally.
So, yeah, let's talk about that because, the stock market's doing pretty well. Inflation's doing better. We got good numbers from the border just for last month because Mexico's cooperating a little bit better. Democrats are going to say things are getting better, and that's going to be a reason to rally around Joe Biden. But Joe Biden had this damning report that came out where he's not going to get charged, but it's because he's a elderly man, a well-meaning elderly man with a bad memory. And then he comes out in anger like, your grandpa that you got to take the keys away from. So it's a very difficult time, but I got to believe Democrats are having conversations about, okay, maybe we need to put somebody different in here.
No question. I can verify that with a couple of my good friends who just happen to be Democratic consultants that it went from strong concern, and then last week when he went on stage and had that terrible performance, to almost outright panic behind the scenes in the Democratic Party. You've got James Carville, you've got Axelrod, you've got all these high-profile national Democratic strategists now openly coming up with hypothetical scenarios of how you replace Joe Biden in the most efficient way to give the Democrats a chance of winning in November. And it's near outright panic in the Democratic ranks at this point because they're almost trapped, right? He's so far into the primary process. The question is, can you replace him at the convention, and can you do it with a ticket that could win for them in November? But we've never seen anything like this. We just never been here before, Martha.
Well, and do you replace him with Kamala Harris? Or is the entire ticket tainted because of that? And then, and then we'll talk about the Republicans after you answer that.
Absolutely. Well, so the answer is that from my perspective, we as Republicans would want them to replace him with Kamala because she's so unpopular. We've seen the focus groups. The Democrats have seen the focus groups too. But no, if they get to the point where they're replacing, then I think they're looking at the Gavin Newsoms and other governors around the country. And, just to put it out there, I think that you start to look at Raphael Warnock starts getting a look at the vice presidential level. Right, for them, if they're putting a ticket together that would be their, quote, dream ticket. So I think they could have Georgia implications. I'm not saying that would necessarily work for them, but it would be a better solution than what they have right now.
Wow, that's something I haven't heard, but you know what? He did a good job in getting elected in the special election, then getting elected for a 6-year term. And there's a substantial number of Republicans and independents that voted for him.
No, that's right. I can confirm that the discussions around that are, gosh, you have this rising star in the Democratic Party who happens to be black, right, who won 2 competitive races in what is a still slightly red state of Georgia. And he's got this likability factor in the U.S. Senate and around the country. And on top of that, he's viewed by the Democratic Party as a civil rights icon in his own right because of his role at Ebenezer. So it's an interesting hypothetical that's out there. And but going back to the point, the problem that Joe Biden has is that what ails him, literally and figuratively, he cannot fix. And when you have 86% of the country saying they have serious concerns about his age and ability to serve, that's concerning to me as an American, not just as a Republican in a partisan way, but as an American, because it projects weakness around the world, and we're starting to see the ramifications of that.
So let's talk about Republican politics for a minute. And, and I want to be completely fair here. I'm going to vote for Nikki Haley in the primary. I know she has a very long shot. And I used to say it's about a 2% chance. Now I think it's probably down to about a 0.5% chance. But I think there's the same kind of instability with a Trump candidacy, and that we need somebody that goes into the convention with some delegates. And I hope she stays in. That's just I want to be fair and upfront about my point of view on that. But she's a lot of the things she's said along the way are coming true, okay, as far as the problems with these 2 older candidates. What are your thoughts about, she's getting big crowds? How's South Carolina going to go? Could there be an upset? And what happens going into Super Tuesday?
Look, Nikki Haley's actually had a good couple of weeks, right? And while it feels like her probability of winning is at least stabilized and is not growing. Part of that's because the most valuable players for Donald Trump are Fonnie Willis, Nathan Wade, right? the DA in New York. I mean, the Democrats are helping him win the Republican primary in a very. Some people say that's by design, that they're doing that on purpose because they view him as the weaker candidate. I don't have any proof of that, but it sure is working for them. Yet Nikki is still raising a lot of money. She's doing it in small dollar donations. She's had some great interviews on national television in the last week. But when you're running a campaign like that, you need to have a good campaign, and your opponent has to make mistakes. Where Donald Trump has made a couple of mistakes in the last couple of weeks is in his comments about essentially, and again, whether he meant to do it or not, he essentially invited Putin to attack our allies in Europe. If they don't pay the requisite amount for NATO. I think it's okay for us as Republicans to say we've got to get them to pay more for NATO, but as a former president, we can't be inviting one of our, if not our greatest adversary in the world, to attack our allies. We need those allies in order to maintain the peace and not have to send our young men and women to war. Those kind of mistakes will actually provide an opportunity for Nikki Haley to stay in the race, stay longer. And I do see a scenario, Martha, where she could take it all the way to the convention, because when we talk about Biden's age, at the end of the day, the Democrats are pointing out that Donald Trump's not that much younger, and he's shown some similar signs. And so if they replace Biden, then we would have a problem. And all of a sudden, age and mental capacity would become an issue for us. And we as Republicans need to at least acknowledge that we do have that issue.
Heath Garrett, I love your independent analysis, and I appreciate you being with us. We're going to have you back again.
I think you have the greatest show. Thank you.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.